if you want to make more money, work more hours. If you want to make more money, cash in your vacation time and take the money instead. Don't take the vacation.
So I've been in business since 2020, and I've officially spent more on courses than I did on college. All right, so one, I just want to give you a shout out the gate. Every time I've heard your name, it's usually Matt, the guy that helps me with, and then it's always like whatever you help them with. So
Oh yeah.
that was what got me excited. And but yeah, so basically the goal of this podcast is to bring on people like yourself who, if we check your Facebook posts, look like you're killing it. And
Mm-hmm.
basically bring it back to earth to understand that you're just another guy figuring it out like the rest of us. And I'll start it off with a YouTube video of yours I actually watched this morning. And I think it was how to get rich or how to become a millionaire in 5 years with real estate. And you kind of talked about how you didn't grow up with the best knowledge, the best resources. So for everyone that is watching this, can you kind of give a little background on how your life started and how you got into what you're doing now?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, I mean, I've been in real estate going on 19 years now. I started in November of 2005. I wasn't I wasn't a college person. Neither of my parents even graduated from high school. And so I went into college really because, back in 1994, that's kind of what you did. Things are a lot different now. There's a lot of entrepreneurs and the internet's changed a lot of that. But when I graduated, the internet wasn't really even a thing yet. So, so I went to college for one semester. After that semester was over, they told me, I couldn't come back. So I ended up going back. I went back home to a small town in Aledo, Illinois, where I grew up. That's where my parents still live there. And I started working at a local machine shop. The economy wasn't great back then, and so that was like one of the only places hiring. So I did that. I worked in a machine shop for from the time I was 19 through the time I was like 30, early 30s. I did my very first deal in November 2005, which was I was 30 years old. I still worked for 3 years after I started in real estate.
So
Um,
did you have a like I need to quit this job? Like when in that timeline did you first start having the thoughts of like, is there something else I can do?
Well, yeah. So I have like at that time, what really like the one moment that kind of like flipped the switch for me was I started dating this girl when I was 26 years old, and we dated for about 4 years. And it was one of those situations where, here I am, a machine shop worker coming home every day, just covered in oil and grease, working 12-hour shifts. And she was like a doctor, and she had a nice house, lived in a nice house. I had this tiny little apartment, and we dated for 4 years. And one day she came up to me and she was just like, "I want to break up." And when I asked her why, she said, "I want to date somebody with status, somebody that makes money." And so I didn't really know. I didn't really know about making money. I grew up my dad always just worked a job. I didn't really know anybody that had businesses. All of my friends, their parents just worked at a job. And so I really didn't understand money. Got to remember, this is long, long time prior to things like Facebook and all that stuff. So there wasn't social media back then. So, I had never even read a self-help book. I didn't know the self-development section even existed in the library. I didn't read books. And so, but that moment kind of hit me pretty hard. And I started asking different questions like, man, how do I make money? All I ever knew was, my dad taught me was if you want to make more money, work more hours. If you want to make more money, cash in your vacation time and take the money instead. Don't take the vacation. So I was always the guy that was working as the maximum amount of overtime you could. I would get part-time jobs outside of that. And that's really how the whole process started. So I was up late one night. I had a small little 300 square foot apartment, and the living room and the bedroom was the same room, but I only paid $275 a month. So it was really cheap. And so I was up late one night. Back then it was kind of weird because I'd keep the TV on all night long.
Oh, that's like a
And
TikTok open on your phone the whole night.
Yeah, so I just left the TV on all the time, and then I woke up in the middle of the night one night, and there was this infomercial on TV playing, and it was this guy talking about how to do no money down real estate. And so I ordered the books, and that's really what kind of like got me started into the business.
Did you grow up around people that had the rich people are evil mindset? Did that ever get through your town?
No, I don't think that was really the case, but every time I asked my dad, like we would be driving down the road. Our form of we didn't like we had really no money growing up. We didn't have nice cars and we didn't go on fancy vacations or have things like, you know, nice TVs or any of that stuff. Like it was very, very basic. And so for like our Sunday entertainment was, I mean, we didn't go out to eat, no fast food, no McDonald's, none of that stuff. We like it was very, very basic. So our fun for the Sundays was always the same routine. My parents like to go for Sunday drives, and they like to go drive around neighborhoods that had nice houses. And so when I say nice house, we're talking about $200,000 houses. We're not talking like $1 million mansions. That was beyond their thinking. So we would drive through these neighborhoods, and I would always point to us, oh, that house is really nice. And it's maybe a $200,000 house, but it's way nicer than the house we live in. And I'd ask my dad, like, how does that person afford it? And he always had the same answer. He's like, they inherited the money. That was it was never like, well, that guy has a business or none of that. It was always like he didn't understand it himself, you
Yeah.
know? So I didn't ever have like a rich people are evil. That stuff wasn't really like we were held accountable. You know, you're in charge of your own destiny. You know, my parents would also tell me you can do anything you want if you put your mind to it, you know, but I just didn't understand there was different things I should be looking at. So all of a sudden start buying books about how you can do real estate without putting, you know, using your own cash, and all of a sudden like that's a different set of information that I've never seen. And I just became like this insane crazy person reading books and studying and just learning as much as I could. But I did my very first deal within 30 days.
Okay, that's something I want to talk about because I think my generation might be getting killed with the analysis paralysis of there's
Mm-hmm.
almost like once you learn how to find info, sometimes you find too much. So how did
Mm-hmm.
you make sure that from the time of okay, I saw this commercial in the middle of the night to I did a deal in 30 days, was it just like I have to take what I learned and apply it, or how did you think about it?
I didn't think that it never crossed my mind that it was not doable. So I didn't know anybody that had tried it and failed it at it. So I just thought, okay, this is what the books tell me to do. That's what I just followed the instructions. That's really all I did. So I was so naive, I didn't understand that maybe it wasn't even possible. I didn't understand the hype, you know, behind an infomercial. I really never bought anything off of TV. So you know, it was just like, here's the books, here's what it says to do, go out and do it. And then you're going to fail a whole bunch of times. Okay, no problem. And then you'll get something. So,
So what was your first deal? Can you kind of break down that for
yeah,
anyone?
I found it. I still own it. I actually did this. I did this cool creative deal where I found somebody to help me buy it. I partnered up with this guy that wanted to also do real estate, and he had money. He was a lot older than me. Not a lot, maybe 10, 12 years older than me, but he had money and he drove nice cars and stuff. So I went to him and said, hey, you want to make some money in real estate? And he put up the money for the deal, and then we fixed it up and then refinanced it, and then he got his money back plus the profit. And so then I owned it then by myself. So I found it. It's a 4 unit building. I found it in actually in a newspaper in a small little tiny little ad. And this is before Craigslist. This is before, you know, Facebook Marketplace, social media. Like you had to use different techniques back then to find deals if you wanted to find off market stuff.
So
So
that was like who would have been the person that bought that newspaper ad at the time?
so this lady that owned it, she just wanted to sell it, so she put an ad in the paper to sell her property.
So you call her up and basically said, "Hey, I want to look at this property."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I called dozens and dozens of those people, and I just started making offers on all of them, and she took my offer.
And so at
And
that moment, you said you didn't quit your job. So was it kind of like you're starting to get proof of concept at this point?
Yeah, because I did 12 deals in my first 12 months. I did one deal a month every single month. Um, and then all the second year, I only did 10 deals. And then I took 2 months off because I was like getting a little overwhelmed because I'm working full time, I'm doing this real estate and all this. And then the third year, I think I did 19 deals. And then '08 hit, November of 2008 hit. And now I had some experience. I'd been in real estate for 3 years. I'd done quite a few deals. And it's November of 2008. The world's coming to an end, massive amounts of layoffs. And I called my boss and I just told him, I'm like, hey, this is in November. This is November 7th, 2008. So if you really go back in history, you'll find it's like the worst month of when all the pandemonium was happening with all the bad stuff. I mean, we're talking hundreds of thousands of layoffs every single month with all these companies. Stock market's in half, and most people are clinging to job security. And at that point, I had I had a small portfolio of houses. I understood real estate. I just went through the hardest time in history of real estate to find good deals. It was very, very difficult to compete against people back then because it was a very hot market and you didn't have to have your own cash to do deals. People could just lie, which I would never do, but people would lie to the bank and say, I make $500,000 a year. They'd give them a line of credit for $250,000.
So it really
So
was that, because I was in middle school at the time. So it really was that crazy. I mean, you could just kind of walk in and get finance for almost anything.
I had friends that were in college that would get lines of credit and they didn't even have a job.
Okay, so it was. And
Mm-hmm.
so at this time frame, you're kind of looking at the market and going, okay, so now, so inventory was an issue when you began. So it was hard to find deals, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so then you actually saw this as an opportunity and you weren't one of the people panicking. You were like, oh, this is actually going to open some doors.
Yeah, I looked at it as a huge opportunity. Most people didn't. Most people, 99.9% of the people were getting wiped out, including current real estate investors. But I logically bought properties that made sense. And
Yeah.
so I made massive amounts of offers. That was one of the things. I didn't just make an offer. I was offering on, you know, 25 to 35 houses a week. And so I was making all these offers and my deals that I got were really good deals. So when I saw that when the downturn was really getting crazy, I tell you, there was the one guy, a friend of mine, his name's Alan. He remembered, I told everybody I was quitting my job within 3 years of real estate. I did my very first deal November 10th, 2005. He remembered that I said that. And he called me like a month or so before the deadline. For some reason, I'm still really good friends with him to this day, but for some reason, he remembered. And I literally told everybody, I'm quitting my job within 3 years. And I didn't know when I said that, we're in the greatest economy in the history of the United States. I didn't know that we'd be in the worst economy in the history of the United States 3 years later. But I set that goal and he called me like a month before or so before the deadline, and he's like, "You're going to hold your word, right?" And because I was really scared, and I was thinking about, not living up to that, and I'm like, "Nope, I'm quitting." So I basically called my boss, and November 7th, 2008, 3 days before the deadline, and just said, "Hey, I'll give you my 2 weeks notice, but I'd prefer today be my last day." And
So
so,
go
hmm,
ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, so my boss thought I was crazy, because everybody was like trying to keep their jobs and not get laid off. And so that was my last day. And then I really, now I had all the knowledge, and I didn't have a lot of money yet, but I had the knowledge. I had some equity, a little bit of cash, like 20 grand, and I had time. I had the one thing I hadn't experienced yet. So when I got all my time back and I had all my knowledge, then I mean my business skyrocketed. From that time, within 4.5 years of that day, I built a 450 house portfolio, and so I went from 30 houses in my portfolio in '08 to 2013. I had 450, not doors, talking properties, single family homes, duplexes, fourplexes, and I didn't do syndication. I didn't do partnerships, and I didn't do private money. And I had a million. I did have some partnerships, but I didn't do any private money, and I didn't do any syndications. But I had a million in cash at that point, and cash in the bank, my bank, and I had 8 figures of net worth, and I had all this cash flow and all these properties, and so in 5 years I basically set myself up for life, you know.
And because I think this is something I've talked to a lot of my friends about. Like, if Pat's watching, Pat, May 17th is coming up. 2 years at Tesla. He's got to quit. He told us the same thing. But
Hmm.
I think they have this fear of the other side is worse. Like, oh, if I take this risk, it's going to be worse. But for you, I want to ask, when you had that time and that knowledge, was it more fun doing that than the 12-hour shifts that you were probably sick and tired of?
Oh, definitely. Your worst day as an entrepreneur is better than the best day at a job, in my opinion. And I didn't know I was an entrepreneur. I'd never had, when a lot of people say that entrepreneurs are born, I had no plans on, starting my own business. No plans at all.
And so in the beginning, did you feel like it was a business, or is it I'm just Matt doing a lot of work?
Um, I knew it was a business, but I knew it was going to be a lot of work, and I knew I had a lot to do, which is why I got busy and just put my head down and did a whole bunch of deals. Now I haven't ever stopped doing deals. '07 is the last time that I had a month that I didn't do deals. But I just, I had a lot of, I knew I had to build out. I knew at this point that I wanted to get to a certain lifestyle. I started realizing I started making real money, and I started realizing that I wanted to live in certain places and certain houses, drive certain cars, and you get a little bit of addicted to the money. And I, at this point, by between 2008 and 2013, I built my portfolio up to 450 houses, but I did thousands of deals. A lot of those deals were wholesales. So I was making 7 figures income per year paid on taxes, you know.
Yeah.
So I had 7 figures in cash in the bank. I had 7 figures in income per year, plus my portfolio. And you get used to, like, you start making, like, all of a sudden you've never made more than 50,000 in a year at a job, and now you're making 50,000 in a week. So there's some adjustment to the psychology behind making that much money. You don't know what to do with it. Luckily I was smart enough to put some money in the bank and save it, but I spent a lot of money on lifestyle. I live big.
Yeah, one of the things I've heard the example of with money is potential energy. So when you give someone who's not used to that much energy or money in this example, sometimes it can just overwhelm you. So is there
Hmm.
any advice you would give to a younger Matt of what to do with the money, or do you think you learned in the correct way of like maybe I did spend too much at times?
Hmm. I mean, you should save a lot. You should save a lot. So I would pile money into a savings account. Definitely don't listen to all the people that say, I'm putting money in a savings account is dumb. You should have your money working for you. That's absolutely false. You should have some money working for you, but you should have a stockpile of cash. Everything's easier when you have a stockpile of cash. If you wake up in the morning with scarcity and with, like, I need money, you'll make bad decisions. So you should have a lot of cash in the bank. It just changes your confidence. Everything's easier. Deals come to you. It's just a different world. So I always tell everybody, just stockpile a whole bunch of cash and watch what happens to your life.
So do you think, because I've seen this with a lot of people, do you think that's actually one of the easiest ways to get rid of a scarcity mindset is just actually having cash to where you know that you can be okay?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, you should have, quite a bit of cash on hand. You know, you should never have like a am I getting a glare for you? Are you good? Is the picture okay?
Yeah, it's good. So it just keeps getting sunny and not sunny. So yeah, I think
Yeah.
you're gonna get brighter and a little darker, but yeah, it's all
Okay.
good.
So yeah, I'm just trying to make sure I'm not. All right. But yeah, no, the scarcity piece is real. Like, I talk to a lot of investors every week, And don't take my word for it. Go ask a banker. But if you talk to a banker, they'll tell you that most real estate investors are broke. And I know that to be true because I talk to a lot of investors every day, and most of them are broke. Most of them, it looks like on social media that they're, killing the game, and they might have paper net worth, but you can't spend paper net worth. One thing happens to your credit, and you can't refinance. If if the economy shifts, your net worth can go down. Your equity can drop. If the economy shifts, there aren't buyers there potentially. But if you have cash, physical cash in the bank, you have you have you have an asset that's real.
Yeah, a lot of the people I work with that I would say are the easiest to work with agree with that thinking. They definitely make their investments and they reinvest, but there is what I would call a pretty big rainy day fund where they
Mm-hmm.
can have money, one, for emergencies, but two, for the right opportunities. And I think that's what you're talking about when you say that sometimes you need to be ready for a deal where,
Mm-hmm.
you can't always be, I need to survive and get one right now, but maybe I want to pick the best one.
Mm-hmm. I met a guy at an event a while back, and we were talking, and he said that he's like, yeah, I think he said he had 200 properties or something like that. I got a couple hundred properties, and he's like, what do you think I should do next? And I'm like, well, how much cash do you have? He goes, oh, I'm really safe with cash. I got 150 grand in cash saved up. And I'm like, if you've got 200 houses and you have 150,000 in cash, you're in trouble. One wrong thing and you're screwed. So, like, you should have a significant amount of cash based on the assets that you own. So that's a pretty important piece.
Yeah, I had an interview with a guy. I don't know if you follow him on social media, but Beyond Win, and he was talking about how the first time he got into real estate, he basically made the mistake of over leveraging everything. And
Mm-hmm.
those band-aids started falling off, they kept falling off. And it was this down trickle effect where he basically had to restart his whole investing career over. And now,
Mm-hmm.
he's doing it the right way 10 years later, but I've definitely heard of a lot of stories like that. But the other thing you brought up, because I definitely want to talk about it today, is some people look like they're doing it on social media. Some people are actually doing it on social media. And,
Mm-hmm.
I would give you the compliment of being like the copywriting wizard. I end up reading every Facebook post from top to bottom, and I like how you're hitting the return line. What effect on real estate investing have you seen social media make from a high level? Like, because obviously you've been in it before and you're here now. So, like, how
Mm-hmm.
different is it?
You know, if you really go back in time, in the beginning days of Facebook, maybe through 2012, 13, 14, nobody was really nobody really used Facebook as a business tool. It was simply a place to like talk to your friends and like post about some stuff. So prior to those years, social media wasn't hypey. I don't think they even had ads back then. I think the ad thing started, like, Facebook ads haven't been around since the beginning of Facebook.
I think it was
So
like, yeah, somewhere in the 2013 to 16 range.
yeah, yeah. So that's when ads started, and that's where the hypey stuff happened, and that completely changed the landscape of a lot of these businesses. Like, a lot of these, you can make money and you can make millions and everything now, according to a lot of the ads. And so it has changed. And wholesaling was also 19 years ago when I actually did my first wholesale deal in like '07 or 8. And so back then, the nobody even knew what wholesaling was. Like, you couldn't find one person that knew what wholesaling was.
Yeah.
Now, if you were in a real estate investment club, they didn't know what wholesaling was.
Okay.
It was very, very like, it was not a common thing. Everybody said it was illegal. Now there's actually laws changing in some states with wholesaling, and there's some rules. Back then there were no rules. It was like you could do whatever you wanted, but everybody said it was illegal. And every time I would ask my attorney back then, hey, is I just somebody told me wholesaling is illegal, and he's like, who was that? And I tell him their name, like, well, are they an attorney? I'm like, no, don't take legal advice from somebody that's not an attorney. It's not legal. And my attorney at the time really helped me learn wholesaling. he helped me through the whole process, which was kind of cool.
Yeah, because you couldn't just go on some guy's Instagram and get, a free assignment contract PDF,
Mm-mm.
probably.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Nobody really knew too much about it, but it started getting popular. Now it's very popular. There's a lot of people doing wholesaling. There's a lot of young people doing wholesaling, which I think is awesome. It's always neat to see a young person make a bunch of money. Um, and now some of the people I trained are my own competition, lots of them. People that get my education and all that, but it just keeps you sharp. It keeps it keeps you on your game. And I don't really mind competition at all.
So that's another thing I was excited to talk to you about today. I just got off a call with a guy. So he's like a health trainer. And
Mhm.
one of the concepts he really wasn't comfortable with was I was like, you're going to have to help a lot of people for free and know that the 10% that you are able to monetize are going to be very good people to work with. So for you, like, how do you think about, because you probably, I mean, how many people are you talking to a week where you would say you generously give them knowledge?
30 to 50 a week.
Okay. So why do you do that?
I don't know. I just like to. I think it's kind of fun to do. I have the time because my businesses, I run all my businesses with virtual assistants. So I don't have a lot to do each week. If I wasn't talking to people, I would get bored. I wouldn't have a lot going on.
Yeah.
And I own a lot of seven-figure businesses that do real revenue, including my wholesaling business that I put 2.5 hours a month into tops. And that's probably an exaggeration. It's probably a lot less than that. I do a 30-minute meeting scheduled for 30 minutes a week. Typically we're done in 20. I look at my midday and end of day reports on KPIs. I look at my end of week reports on KPIs. I meet a mobile notary once a week at my house, and sign any double closes that I'm doing, and that's it. I don't talk to sellers. I don't talk to buyers. I don't decide how much we're going to offer on a house. I don't decide how much we're going to sell a house for. I don't do any of it.
So, how did you know it's time to start like diluting parts of Matt into specific roles? Because in the beginning, you did everything, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, how did that process go? I briefly heard it in a couple of your YouTube videos, but for me
Mm-hmm.
selfishly, I was lucky enough that the girl I live with is really organized, and I'm not. So she is great at systematizing everything, and then we also have I think 5 virtual assistants now that are
Mm-hmm.
basically implementing the system she created. So for
Mm-hmm.
you, like, how did you understand the role game? Because I think anyone can hear hire a VA and then have a
Mm-hmm.
bad experience, but how did you actually delegate it into different roles?
Well, I mean, I just started looking around. Again, you got to have the right mentors. And I had a mentor in my life early on, that basically he helped me. He basically said, this was probably I was probably in real estate maybe 5 years at this point, but he's like, hey, start delegating out some of the roles that are not income producing roles and find somebody to do those things. And so in 2013, I hired my very first person who still works for me. But I just started taking the things off my plate that I either didn't like or wasn't good at them. And then I would just build a process on how to do that thing, like start to finish. Here's how to do it. And then I would hand it off to her, and then she would go do it. And then all of a sudden, it's like I got a whole bunch of time back, and I'm
So
making more money.
So how did because I think that's the part where like I'm stuck where it's like I now know how to hand some of those things off. How do you as Matt, especially now, find the next right thing to do? Because I think that's another skill. Like yes, part of it is give the one thing to someone else, but now with all this time, how do you find the next better thing? Or is it just do more of what already works?
Well, you go through an evolution. So you start taking the what I call minimum wage activities off your plate, and then all of a sudden you're left with what's left over. Now you get to choose. Do I want to Matt's really good at sales. Should Matt go do more sales, or will that lead to happiness? It will definitely lead to more money. Anytime I get involved in sales, I'm the best salesperson on all of my businesses, but I don't necessarily want to sell all the time. So you go through an evolution. Eventually, you decide, okay, I'm going to give up some revenue here, but I'm going to gain back a whole bunch of time. So I'll have somebody else who's probably not as good at sales go do this role, and then I got all my time back. And so that's kind of the evolution you go through. It's like at some point you start saying no, even though saying no might cost you a little bit of money.
Yeah, I think that I struggled with that in the beginning, and then it feels like every time I'm on the other side of it, it's funny that I resisted.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have
Mm-hmm.
waves of that or no?
Yeah, oh yeah, definitely. I remember, somebody would say, "Hey, I'll give you $5,000 if you teach me how to do this," and I would jump at that. Like, "Oh, I'll rearrange my life to go help you learn that thing." And then one day you're like, I don't, I have no interest in doing that. In fact, sometimes people hit me up and they'll call me and they'll be like, "Hey, can I hire you one on one?" And I'm not saying I don't take some one on ones because I do. It's just the right ones. But there are times when I'm like, I wouldn't even do it for 25 grand. It's not, you're not the right fit or you don't need it. Like I talk people out of it sometimes, like, I don't think you need it. Like, I'll just help you. I'll tell you what to do right now. And so you get to a point where the time is more important. And that's where I'm at right now. Even in my real estate business, any of my businesses, if I worked harder on those businesses, I could make a lot more money. It's just that I just want to have my free time, you know?
And do you think that's something that you see a lot of business owners forget about? Like they forget that they were at one point the Matt who had to work 12 hours a day and kind of
Mhm.
lost track of a personal life.
Most people they never cross that threshold. They don't figure it out. Most business owners never figure it out. They either aren't good at delegating, don't understand how to find and train the best talent, or they just feel that nobody can do it better than them. And that and then that's important to them. If they can't do it better, then that's not a good fit. So I would say most people burn out because they overwork. If I get in trouble in a sense that like we have a problem to solve in my business, I don't roll up my sleeves and say, okay, let me get busy. I never do that. I never jump in and help. That's not my role. My role is finding who can help, who can solve that problem, and I'll cut a check to solve that problem if I have to. I find the top person that's the best at that solving that problem, and I hire them, and then we solve the problem, and somebody on my team learns how to do it, or somebody on my team already exists that can do it, and I trust them to solve that problem, and then they do, and then it's fixed.
So it sounds like you are really good at discipline, but more of discipline of what not to do. So I think a lot of people hear discipline and think, oh, I got to grind really hard. But it sounds like you're very disciplined in what's my role and how do I like keep the structure intact.
Mm.
Because basically, the second you decide I'm going to roll my sleeves up, you've broken the structure. And now you're back in the
Yeah.
weeds of it when that's not even your role in the first place.
Right. And there's a pretty good chance that maybe I'm not doing it the way my team's doing it, does that thing anyway, you know? So the biggest piece to this whole thing is you have to have high level, high caliber people. If you hire a VA on a whim and you don't interview 30 VAs before you hire one, you're making a mistake. You're going to hire the wrong one, and then you don't remove complexity, you actually increase complexity when you hire a wrong person. So a lot of people are like they're dismal within they're disorganized and their day is really dismal because and they can't figure out why. And the reason they can't figure out why is they're like, I've delegated everything that I've been told to delegate. And that's true, but they delegate it to the wrong person. So if you hire the wrong person, things don't get better. And they don't improve a little bit. They get worse.
Yeah,
Some
because
people some people just think that you just got to throw more labor at a problem, and that's not true.
yeah, we had that on our end where, it was basically double time. We were assigning edits to be done, we're watching them and revising them, then we're editing them ourselves. And it was probably three times the amount it would have taken to just do it as one person. And then finally I had to rip the band-aid off. I was like, hey, Katie, I think this is the wrong person. And we went
Mm-hmm.
through the process where it's like the interview has to be better, there has to be testing, there has to be qualification. And yeah, I think it was a tough lesson to learn, but I definitely fell for that mistake up front. Hire the first person that says they can help, and then, the hard thing for me to admit was like I'm the problem. It was me
Mm-hmm.
didn't train correctly, not them.
Most people don't take ownership of that. And I can say in most cases when an employee or virtual assistant fails, it's almost never, it's almost always falls back on the entrepreneur that hired them because they didn't onboard them correctly. They never showed them how to do their job. They didn't hand them a system or a process to learn from. They just kind of gave them like a few pieces of the puzzle and say, go figure it out. And when they fail, they're like, VAs don't work or hiring people sucks or something like that.
Yeah.
So most people just don't do it right. But business is not very difficult. It's not very hard to make a lot of money. It really isn't.
What do you think is the biggest mind block? Is it belief for a lot of people, or is it action taking? Like where, and I know it's both, but like what do you think it leans more?
Um, yeah, I like most people don't take action. That is one problem. Belief is probably part of it too, and but belief might be fueling the fact that they're not taking action. So it's one of those things where there's a lot to like discover a role why somebody fails. What I see a lot of people do is they feel like they have to know everything before they do anything. And and so, you know, you just they're going from one training to the next to the next to the next and they're constantly in learn mode and that's just another mask for procrastination. They think that they're moving the needle by learning, and knowledge is nothing if it's not put into action, you know?
That was, yeah, Think and Grow Rich hurt my feelings, but that was the first time where I was like, yeah, this, what is it, organized knowledge with intelligent action? Yeah, if you
Mm-hmm.
don't put any of it into use, it's nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I know we just met each other, but that was my painful thing. So I had 1 year of college left when COVID hit. And I was like, why am I going here? I'm not learning anything. None of this is being used. And at the time, there was actually a senior level course offered at my university, and it was supposed to be about digital marketing. And there was a
Mm-hmm.
question, there was multiple choice, and it said, out of these five platforms, which one is not real? It said Facebook, Snapchat, Bebop, YouTube, and Google. And I had my Truman Show moment. I was like, I can't believe this is the hardest question that a university can come up with. And I just left. I walked out. And that was my moment of I have to start something better. Like I have to do something that I can control. And
Mm-hmm.
I like that because you didn't go to college, correct?
No, just for a semester.
Yeah, and very quickly it was. So where do you think the best learning moments for you have been throughout your entire career? I'm betting mentors is a big one, but are you a big
Mhm.
book reader?
Yeah. Yeah. I've read, I don't know, I mean, maybe over 1,000 books by now. It's hundreds. It's in definitely in the hundreds. So I learned a lot through that, but you learn a lot in a book. There's some books that are really good at teaching. There's a lot of bad books out there too. But uh, you can learn a lot through books. You can learn a lot through courses, and I've done both. And you can learn a lot through like the fast way to learn is to hire a mentor. And I still do that to this day. I hire mentors. I'm in high level masterminds. So that's the fastest way to learn anything. So you get to decide, okay, I can buy a book for $10. I can buy a course for $1,000, or I can hire a mentor for $10,000 or more. And the faster you want to learn is who you would go to. And I've paid hundreds of thousands of dollars for mentors over the years. So masterminds are really good for that stuff too, as well.
Yeah, so this is my first year. So I've been in business since 2020, and I've officially spent more on courses than I did on college. And that was like my moment. And yeah, I wouldn't know anything if I didn't pay someone who's smarter. But I'm
Mm-hmm.
curious, like a guy at your level, like what are
Mm-hmm.
the things that you struggle with now where you're still figuring it out?
I mean, anything new I mean, it's pretty tough to trip me up in real estate. I'm not saying I've learned everything. There's always I learn something new all the time. Um, but I don't have the big aha moments like I used to. I mean, I've done over 4,000 deals. I've been in this 19 years. I better know a couple of things by now. But there's still always things to learn. There's always new things that are coming in and out. But you don't have to know the answers. Like I don't have to know the answers anymore. I just find somebody else that does. Either that person on my team or I pay a mentor. So but any new thing that I learn, I don't know anything about that. And that's fun for me. Like I love discovering new things that I like new ideas. Like when I got into copywriting 4 years ago, that was a new fun thing for me to learn, you know? And so I didn't know anything about copywriting. And so that's been a fun path for me to go down and I practice every day, you know.
So the everyone always asks me, where'd you get your start? Where'd you get your start? And so I applied for this social media job on campus at my college, and this was back 2017. And I would get 6 pages of paper, 12-point font from the student organizations about their events coming up, and I had to use a 140 character tweet to promote it. And so it
Mm-hmm.
was when my brain had to first like condense.
That's awesome.
I remember hearing that quote. I hated it at the time, but I love it now, where it was like, say more, less words, say more, less words. And I just had to
Yeah.
keep repeating to myself how to do that. So
Yeah.
what's that been like for you? Because I'd say yes, copywriting helps with real estate, but it is definitely a different sector. Like what's fun about it to you?
I don't know. I like writing something that's fun to read and then that other people respond to, you know. And I'm not some master copywriter. You know, I've only been doing it 4 years. I'm in a high level copywriting mastermind, and there's only like 25 members or something, and I'm by far the worst one there. Like everybody's so far ahead of me that it's not even close. But I just enjoy it. I think it's fun. It's a skill set that no matter what business you're in, it will serve you well, you know.
So let's break down a post recently because I messaged you about this. I said this will be studied for generations in digital marketing. So
Mhm.
you made a post the other day where you basically offered your one-on-one help. And I liked how you structured the message, but one of the things we were DMing about was you were nervous to hit post. And
Mhm.
I'm a big believer in when your gut feels weird before you hit that button, something good's about to happen. So talk me through how did you plan this post out and what were your expectations of it before you hit post?
So, I really didn't plan it. I'm in this high level mastermind and my mentor. So I posted that on 7:14 a.m. on Friday morning. I learned about the auction style post from my high level mastermind. He wasn't talking about it for like one-on-ones. He was just using it as like a good way to get, stuff going. I just didn't know what else to offer at the time, and I wanted to test the idea. And I learned that at 4 o'clock Thursday night. So Thursday afternoon, I learned that by 7:14, I posted it. I got up in the morning, didn't know I was going to post it. Started thinking about what I had learned the day before. Thought, okay, what could I apply it to? For some reason, one-on-ones came up just for fun, and I didn't think that when I started writing it, I was fine, and I got these weird butterflies in my stomach when I got it done. Um, and I was like, wait a minute, this is risky. If I post a product of some type and nobody buys it, that's no big deal. But if I do this auction and it's a one-on-one where it's me training and nobody bids, I mean, it could hurt my brand. So I started thinking, I don't think I should post this, but I'm kind of an action taker. When I learn something, I try to take action. Finally, I'm just like, post, and I slammed my computer shut and I walked away. And then all of a sudden, you gotta take a look, and it started getting some traction very quickly. And $100 bid came in, then $1,000 bid, a $2,000 bid, and I mean, it sold at 26,000, and it was crazy, man. It was nuts. There's so many bids on there, and I never saw that coming. I never thought that was going to happen. And the cool part was the person that won. I had my first meeting with them yesterday, and was it yesterday or the day before? Two days ago, I had my first meeting with them, and they told me after the first meeting they'd have paid a lot more. So it was cool. It was cool. It was cool because there's so many people. There was three people that bid 25,000. There's a whole bunch of people 10,000 plus, and um, I just didn't know that was going to happen. But the side effects of that are now everybody has a higher image of my brand. They think I'm worth even more than maybe I thought I was, and all my products that I sell after this will be easier.
Well, yeah. What was your biggest takeaway from this? Like, what do you think that moving forward you'll do differently now that you kind
People bid on that post I've never talked to, that have never liked or commented on a single post. And people, I'm getting texts every day from influencers about that post. I just got one yesterday from somebody that was in a big, there was a big event in Utah, with a whole bunch of high level speakers. And he was like, I was at this event and all people were talking about your auction post. And so I never thought that would happen. But now it did. And it worked out, luckily. And, I don't know, it's pretty neat.
And what do you think in 5 years you'll look back on and think of when you think of like the fact that that was something that you might have chickened out on if you would have just let that feeling in your.
I'm glad I did it. It's like at the end of the day, if you're worried about your image, then you probably have some improvements to do. You know what I mean? So I'm glad I took action with it. Looking back, it worked out really good. I'm just glad
Yeah,
it did. There was a few people that reached out to me and were like, "Man, that's such a good idea." I'm like, "You should try it." And they're like, "No way, I'm not doing that."
that's such a good idea. I'm not going to do it.
Yeah, yeah, because it's a reality check if it doesn't work out. You know what I mean? Like, again, it could damage your brand. If
Yeah,
nobody bids, everybody's gonna be like, "Why would I pay that guy for a single thing?"
yeah, yeah. I mean,
So
it was a cool post for me to see, and yeah, I just want to thank you for your time. Like, I know we're coming up
yeah,
on an hour here, but yeah, I've seen a lot of your content, and you've been a highly recommended name, and I figured, you know what, the whole goal of this show is just to get people like you on here to talk about how you didn't always know what was going on, and you're still obviously figuring stuff out. So
yep,
I really
yeah.
appreciate it.
No, I'm glad that I got a chance to jump on with you.